My dad was in the Navy, stationed in North Africa during World War II. After he left high school in 1943, he never finished high school, but they gave him a um, dispensation for leaving for the Navy early. My favorite story about that period of his life is that he always used to say when I was little, "Hey, Susie, want to see my tattoo?" And it was one blue dot on his forcep. I guess a bunch of guys went out and got drunk. He may have been the first one in the chair. They stuck the needle in. He jumped up, ran out, ran down the street, and never went back. But that's what I remember about my dad's tattoo from the big WW2. There's a picture of my mom and dad on the beach dating in 1947 after he came back from North Africa. It was in Seaside Park. And I think if you can see it, there's a cigarette in his hand. My dad was a smoker for a long time, but that picture just shows them so young and innocent. I'm sure typical of a lot of people just back from the war with their young brides. I think that's probably right before they got married. Their wedding was really very simple, and notice my mom had on heels. She was about a quarter of an inch taller than my dad. I don't know how they pulled that off. He must have had lifts in his shoes. The pictures of them young and dating, there's one picture in particular that she's gazing at him adoringly. And I'm reminded of the story my mom tells because it was just such a strange pairing, coupling. But my mom always said the one thing that they had in common was they both thought he was wonderful. And a lot of the young pictures of them dating show her gazing adoringly at him. I don't know whether she had him backed against the wall or not. I don't know how they got together, but they did. And I think when they were a very young couple, they spent a lot of time with family. Some of the pictures of my dad in that era show him looking very Italian, almost like he's part of the mob. And I remember when I was a young child, I had a large color TV in my bedroom, and no one else in the neighborhood that I knew had a color TV in their bedroom. And I remember saying to my dad once, "Dad, where'd you get the TV?" And he grabbed me a little bit roughly for my dad, who never laid a hand on me, and said, "I'm going to tell you this once, and then I'm never going to tell you again. Susie, it fell off the back of a truck." After my parents were married, they moved to Fanwood, New Jersey from some apartments in Elizabeth when they built their first home. I think they continued to have a lot of family from Elizabeth visit, but they were very proud of the fact that they had moved to an upwardly mobile suburb and built a Cape Cod on Patterson Road. My dad then built a small storehouse, warehouse, cottage, whatever, shed in the backyard, and I remember playing in that when I was a kid. A neighbor wanted to get rid of a garage, and my mom was a bookkeeper, kept the books for a lot of different businesses and didn't want to work in the house. So the neighbor got a huge piece of equipment, picked his garage up, and drove it over to our house. My dad had put a cement pad down in the backyard for the garage to be set upon, and after it hardened before the garage was delivered, the kids were out there, and he told us that he'd built us a roller skating rink. And we believed him until the garage actually got delivered and dropped right on the cement pad. My parents, as they were starting their young family, probably in the late 50s, my brother's born in 55, I was born in 57, had a very typical American young family life, and that included some costume parties in the neighborhood. My dad was always the outgoing one. My mom was always the more shy, retiring, quiet one. They were not great at taking pictures for the family, but there are some that are in color. Oftentimes we had several holidays from Easter through Christmas all in the same roll of film. My dad was a very devoted father to his young children, and there's tons of pictures of my brother Dave, typically first child pictures. I don't know how it happened, but my brother wound up with the nickname of Pork Nose. And when I see pictures of my dad with my brother when he's young, I always think of Pork Nose. My brother was a great big brother, still is, but my dad was always the jokester, the prankster. He used to do a little thing where he stuck a pole up his back and into his top hat, and then below on his finger, and his face would get redder and redder, and his hat would rise off his head, and we thought that was hilarious when we were kids. He was always the jokester. My mom hated having her picture taken, so most of the pictures from my childhood are with my father, my brother, and myself, usually on some momentous occasion like heading to Brooklyn on Easter Sunday, where my brother's clothes were usually too small because he'd already outgrown them, and mine were too big because we always bought them to grow into. I had a pretty delightful but typical 1960s childhood. Ultimately left Famwood, he left Edna, and moved back to Elizabeth, and somewhere along the line he became the Pussycat, and that's how he was known with his friends and neighbors. He was always good with pussycats, but he was good with any kind of animals, particularly dogs. My brother's had several dogs, one named Rocket, and another one that he still has, I think, that was my dad's favorite, but every time Pop would babysit the dog would gain 10 pounds while my brother was out skiing for a week. Grandchildren came, and there's one picture I absolutely love of my father with his first grandchild. I don't know how old John was, but the joy in both their faces is undeniable. And he loved his grandchildren like his children. Wherever I was, my dad would try and visit me, particularly around my birthday time, sometimes just to fly to Atlanta or Boston or Miami or Ohio, wherever I was, and take me to dinner for my birthday. I introduced my husband Artie, my to-be husband Artie, to my parents when they were together later in life, before the grandchildren came, or all of them. They kind of got back together, just more as pals and roomies, but we spent some great time sharing memories. One thing my dad always loved to do was eat, and we spent a lot of time eating when we. One of the highlights of my dad's life, I think, when he started to age, was a surprise birthday party Mom gave for him in the late 90s, I think 97, for his 70th birthday. It truly was a surprise, and what a great way to celebrate 70 years. His sister Ro got in on the act and set something up, so she spent time with him and delivered him at the appointed hour to his surprise party. I do truly believe it was a surprise, and he delighted in the fact that all of his friends and family were there and were actually kissing the ring of the Pope of Vine Street. My brother and I got to spend some time together, which we normally didn't, and everyone in the family was there. It was a great day. My cousin Pam was pregnant, so even some of the next generation was there, although in utero. There's a big family photo before everybody got too old and had to be in a wheelchair or something. That's one of the last great family photos we have. Of course, Edna's not in it. She was probably taking it. The other photo from that day is my dad with all his cronies from the Fanwood Fire Department, and I don't know if they realized how cute they looked. Mr. Rue had on red suspenders, and Pussycat was the shortest of the group, but in the picture he's scrunching down so he doesn't block anybody. They're just all elderly and still Fanwood's finest firefighters. Favorite picture of him is a picture of him in black and white, so it's probably from the 40s, where he has his dark hair and his eyeglasses on. He's devastatingly handsome, sunglasses. He looks like maybe an Italian film director, but he's on a ship and he's looking forward and it's almost as if he's gazing into the future. And I just absolutely love that. I wish I could have that as my memory, my dad, but he just was a special guy. Love you, Dad.